Our commentators Andrew Kirton and Brigitte Morten. Kia ora kōrero, great to have you with us.
Kia ora.
Morten.
And let me do their little briefs first. Andrew was a speechwriter for Helen Clark, was Labour's General Secretary, 2017 campaign manager, worked for Christopher Luxon at Air New Zealand. In 2023 was Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Chris Hipkins, is now Director of a corporate affairs firm Richard Bartley and married to a current Labour MP. Brigitte's a Director with public and commercial law firm Franks Ogilvie, a former senior ministerial advisor for previous National-led government, a National Party member and volunteers during campaigns for the party's Deputy Leader, Nicola Willis. Right, the story that's broken just in the last hour or so is that Te Pāti Māori's National Council has voted to expel MPs Māori o Mino Kapakingi and Taku Te Wheres after this torrid period of internal conflict. So that's a third of the party's MPs now no longer going to be in the party. They will become independent MPs. That vote happened last night. The co-leaders announced it today. Te Pāti Māori MP Taku Te Wheres has already in a statement said the decision is plainly unconstitutional. He's called the resolutions illegal. And in the media conference, the co-leaders were at pains, it seems, to say that the party is ready to work in as part of a government next year. Let's have a look at this. Brigitte, what do you make of it? In some ways, was it inevitable, or certainly in some ways, is it the cleanest break for the party to make with these MPs? How are you reading it?
Well, I think it's the cleanest break that they wanted to make, but unfortunately all the signs are there that it's not going to be that clean. I think we've already seen reports from Kapakingi and possibly Wheres as well that there will be legal challenges. Therefore, this is likely to go on in the courts at least for another couple of months while that works its way through. There's also the decision about what happens in terms of waka jumping, and then, of course, a by-election. And if they, assuming that both those MPs restand, that therefore you've got the circumstances where they would then be having to fight, against their former MPs. So I think this is the start of cleaning up that process, but by no means is this the end of it.
Andrew, would they use waka jumping? I mean, we were just saying to our acting political editor, there's hardly any of this parliamentary year left. Then you're back in February. You have to get it done we have to get it done within 6 months of the election, so you have to get it done by, say, May. Do you think they'll go there?
Well, I think they might, and that comes down to the two MPs themselves about where they see themselves going. Obviously, the co-leaders want some peace now that they've got out the knife. I'm not sure the two MPs want peace. I think the legal challenge, although it might give them a moral victory, it will be relatively meaningless, because what is the court going to say? It's going to say, well, you should go back into the party, but that doesn't seem to change anything. So they've got a choice to make. They can continue as independent MPs and toe the line and represent their constituencies, but the risk for them is that means oblivion in 2026. Or they can continue to agitate, and that takes them down the path of expulsion. They might be calculating now that leaping ahead of all of that stuff, it might actually be better to actually trigger it themselves by telling the Speaker that they've declared a vacancy. And by the way, they've got to be careful, because Meka Whaitiri almost did that when she defected from Labour. They've basically just got to tell the Speaker or the Clerk that they want to sit in a different part of Parliament. They can't tell the Speaker that their seat is vacated or that they've left their party, because he will trigger the by-election for them. But they might declare that actually running a by-election, maybe forming another political movement, might be the better outcome if it's going to be expulsion anyway. It's going to be interesting to see their reaction.
It's interesting to see whether a new party emerges from this, Brigitte, because remembering, as we were talking about earlier, that one of those two MPs, and particularly her whānau, have been very involved in the Toitū Titiriti movement, which brought, tens of thousands of people to Parliament. And I'm speaking here of Iru Kapakingi, who led that movement. Now, have we had a sense, are we getting a sense that those who were in fact calling for the party's president to resign and move on, that there's enough people and enough of a movement to encourage a potential new party?
Yeah, I think there is the possibility of that. I think when you've got a basis to work from, say, the Toitiriti movement, that getting those number of signatures for a new party is actually much more possible than starting from nothing. So I think that has to be realistic. I think you've also just got to be careful that there's two MPs involved here, and I think the two MPs bring different personalities and possibly different priorities to their advocacy. A lot of this recent movement has been around Kapukingi and her advocacy, whereas you look at Takuta Ferris's record, it's been more about him speaking out against what the main party members wanted to be the key narrative. He seems to have taken a different approach to what he thinks the politics of the day should be, as opposed to some of the processes. So I think if you were to have by-elections, you might have two very different campaigns run. I wouldn't necessarily agree just because they have been bonded in the fact that they've both gone through this process at the same time, that necessarily means that they would be a new party within themselves.
Interesting. Next point, Andrew, for Labour and for the Greens, as we said, that as the polls have been looking for most of this year, it's so tight between a potential centre-right bloc with three parties and a centre-left bloc with three parties. And just from reports of the media conference happening today, the Te Pāti Māori leaders very keen to say we're ready for government, we're ready to work with Labour and the Greens. But how worrying is this for Labour and the Greens in terms of what it does to the viability of that left bloc?
Well, it depends on where the numbers fall. I mean, I think that actually Chris Hipkins has a reason to crack open an extra Diet Coke this morning and celebrate, because it might mean that the Greens and Labour can continue that trajectory of perhaps being able to govern alone without Te Pāti Māori. The best result for that bloc is for Te Pāti Māori and perhaps, I don't know, one or two other Māori movements that are in Parliament at the time or independents get 0.1% of the party vote, but win their electorates, which creates an enormous overhang and might get them there. A huge overhang. I don't know whether they'd put them in Parliament, but that is good. On the contrary to that, of course, if there's chaos, if there's infighting, or if they turn their guns on Labour and the Greens, who knows what happens, and that just feeds the National Party and coalition attack of chaos on the left.
Is it a little bit optimistic for Labour? Because Te Pāti Māori have been up fairly consistently around that 4% mark. And yes, it loses some MPs here, in fact, and perhaps, and we know in Te Tai Tokoru, I don't think they were even at the meeting last night, you might lose some. But is it a bit optimistic to think that somehow you're going to have voters currently solidly supporting Te Pāti Māori switch to Labour or Greens or anywhere else? It might be a little optimistic. Well,
the Te Pāti Māori, they're saying that they wanted this to be a one-term government. So I think Labour can use that to their advantage and say, look, we hear you. We want it to be a one-term government as well. The only way you can do that, or a great way you can do that, is to be strategic and vote for Labour and get us over the line. And there's no one more strategic than Māori seat voters, that's for sure. So I think they might get that.
How do you read it, Brigitte, as in terms of prospects for that left bloc getting the numbers one way or t'other?
Yeah, I wouldn't be cracking out the sausage rolls quite yet. I think that for Labour, the main problem they've got is that for them to campaign on the basis that it would be just a Labour Greens government and that therefore would be stable, you need the polls to be showing something considerably better than they are at the moment. At the moment they're sort of going back and forth in terms of left bloc, and so I think they're still going to have to counter all those attacks, because whilst Te Pāti Māori is out there today saying we're prepared to govern, prepared to do the things to get us a one-term government, a lot of the policies that they've stood on, a lot of the procedural things they've stood on in Parliament indicate that they're not ready to be part of a government and could not be part of a stable government. And I think for most voters, that's going to be a significant issue for them about whether or not they can trust not Labour necessarily, but actually who Labour's friends are that they're bringing in with them.
And just to add that, I mean, I think that's a perfectly rational calculation. But I think if Chippy has some steel and during that process, if it came down to it, I think as we discussed last time, Kathryn, if Labour and the Greens have got 59 seats and Te Pāti Māori and others have sort of 4, then are they really going to take the country back to an election, or are they going to take the win and move on? But you're right, Brigitte. I mean, in order to get to that place, you need to have enough support. So if National can make plenty hay in the meantime.
It's also in terms of how National can campaign if it goes negative, in terms of what voters might expect, because again you're back to that famous, swing voter, centre voter who may move between the two big parties. Although, goodness me, there's been a lot less of that this term than we've ever seen in MMP's history. We have got the biggest cohort of small parties that we've ever had. In the meantime, back in Parliament, a lot is moving very quickly. And the latest on the climate front was the change to the Climate Change Response Act, a number of them. We spent some time talking about the delinking of the ETS from our international commitments. What seems to be happening here is the government's becoming very focused on its own 2050 targets. However, we have some big obligations with respect to Paris, including 2030 targets and 2035 targets. It wasn't the only thing. Public service is going to get longer to become carbon neutral. The Climate Commission's no longer going to be... Its budgets that it was setting out ahead of the government's own budgets, it's being downgraded on that front. This comes a few weeks after the methane target for 2050's been halved. I commend people to read Mark Dalder's newsroom piece, newsroom.co.nz, if you want to see the full suite of changes on climate of late. Brigitte, what is happening here? I think New Zealand First has been very upfront, Shane Jones in particular, about basically wanting to dismantle a lot, we forgot the oil and gas, dismantle a lot of the previous government's climate policies. But this includes our commitments to the Paris Accord. How are you reading how far the government's going?
I think the government has taken quite a practical and pragmatic view of what's happening in the climate change space. We just need to look internationally to see that the Paris Agreement, I don't think, has the mandate that it had previously. I think many countries are moving away from it, even if those countries, that were signed up. So I think that that's probably the way that the world is going, in the context, therefore, that these changes come at a huge cost, and this government is fighting, a negative sort of economy space, low employment, all of those sort of things, which means people are really feeling it. So I don't think that they want to be out there having to make decisions on the basis that they won't be doing things that help our economy at the cost of, perhaps allowing other economies to flourish when those economies are not dealing with climate change in the same way we are. So I think there's a lot of complication to this bill. There's a lot of different factors, but if you look at it overall, it actually looks like a pretty pragmatic response to what is happening internationally and what we can deal with here domestically. And I think one of the biggest signs is that, as you've seen, that the opposition, particularly Labour, actually hasn't really said that much on this, because I think Labour knows as well that actually we've got to be a bit pragmatic about this and a bit more constructive about what our economy can and can't sustain.
Andrew?
Well, I may be following with the way the Western world is going, but the way the Western world is going is the wrong direction. I mean, I know it's difficult for New Zealand Inc. to actually be an outlier when we're a cork bobbing on the ocean of the world, but it actually links to our overall standing overseas, which in turn, the chickens come home to roost in other ways in terms of, our ability to negotiate trade agreements and the rest of it. We're going to be spending up to $24 billion, according to Treasury, buying credits overseas. We know from the past that some of those will be complete junk. But it's also, we missed the opportunity to build more of that industry here in New Zealand. I was at a conference last week, and Boston Consulting Group were talking about 5 strategic bets they think New Zealand should make on itself, and one of those was green energy. And I think we miss an opportunity here to spend that money here domestically, not just in pine trees, of course, but in other ways. So, yes, it's tough. But I just, it's just sad that we're managing to follow the US administration and others into an area that just leads to, environmental degradation.
You make an interesting point there about the so-called $24 billion that we will be due for in terms of having to make up our failure to cut emissions by buying overseas. It's not happening. We just heard a leading climate she's more than a commentator, she's an expert on ETS and on various climate commitments, Christina Hood, warning that we so far haven't spent a cent on anything overseas to represent that. But I'm hearing increasingly, Brigitte, from the Climate Minister, comments that amount to the fact that he does not believe that bill will be or needs to be paid. And is this where things are heading, that they have decided any failure to meet our 2030, our 2035 commitments, we will not be buying overseas credits or investing in overseas programs to compensate?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of there's a lot of discussion to be had at the international level about what the commitments actually are, because I think we're, as I said before, not the only person that is, or the only country that is looking at what our commitments mean in terms of our economic output and what it means in terms of industry.
My understanding is you don't have to hit the exact number in the pledges that you make, but you have to align the policies that you undertake, the things that you do, to be realistically attempting to meet those targets. There's a big difference when you end up so far away in your policies from the commitments that you've made that they just don't look realistic. Then, that is what we are signed up to. But I'm hearing increasingly just an expectation that we won't be paying up.
Mm.
So I think looking at that position, if you look at our overall, what our policies are doing, I think the detail will be in this bill, and that we need to be careful that we're not over-egging how much is changed in this bill in terms of those international commitments. Without a doubt, we would not have made these decisions in a vacuum of those commitments, because as a whole, we are a country that takes our international commitments, I think, both sides of the government pretty seriously. So I think we need to probably wait and see that detail before we commentate on that. But I think we still need to be realistic about the fact that ultimately we're not the only country making these decisions at the moment. We're not making this in isolation. We're not making this out of step with what is happening internationally.
I mean, if the targets are now just best efforts, I mean, that's certainly how it wasn't sold to the public like that for the last 10 years. It was certainly sold as more ironclad than that. I think we need to just look at where the ETS price went after the government's announcement, even though it snuck it out at night. It dropped by 20% and then came back by 10%. So the market has decided that this is a weakening. And the problem for New Zealand is the next time we get into a bit of an economic funk, 5 years, 10 years' time, isn't the temptation just to, we'll just put it off a little bit more and we'll do a little bit more. At this rate, we'll just never get there. And can I just talk, Kathryn, about the way it was announced as well? Because I just thought that was an appalling, if it was deliberate, and there's some talk of it being a mistake, going out at 8 p.m. at night to a select group of journalists. This comes back to government leadership, which is part of the reason why I think that they're struggling in other ways. If you're going to make a fundamental shift like this, why give the impression that you're sneaking around at night sending it out? Get on get in the podium in the press conference room and announce it. It's the same with the Gaza decision. Just get out on the front foot and announce it. Don't hide behind process or sending press releases out at night. I mean, you'd get more respect and more points by doing it that way.
Another one moving through quickly is the Fast Track Act changes, which are to be fast-tracked. This is an amendment bill. Just quickly, one Labor MP saying in the House, this is starting to look like they want to get closer to what the original Fast Track bill was. More ministerial power, and again, it's perceived as being a bit of a skewing again towards applicants. Look, are they just fulfilling their policy, Brigitte? Again, at least there is a select committee hearing of sorts here, but I suppose the whole point of the Fast Track Act is to speed things up. Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's two key elements. One is actually just a bit of a tidy up of that original bill. It's had a bit of testing in terms of, the application processes, the approvals going through the expert panels, and, there's been a little bit of court action, which has demonstrated that they needed to go back and do a bit of a tidy up. So it is completely in line, I think, with the policy decisions that we ended up with at the end of the last process as well. I don't think this goes anywhere near actually some of those original decisions. And the second thing is obviously using this process to deal with the supermarket issue. This seems really pragmatic, really sensible to actually say, let's use a tool that we use in the Resource Management Act all the time and actually put it into this fast-track process.
Well, this one, but also, mining, aquaculture, energy, roads, housing developments. It was an interesting media release that came out there. Andrew, to be fair, this has been called government policy. People may object to it, may see it as a watering down of democratic processes, but actually, as one person we spoke to said, you also need to get good information in order to make good decisions that don't end up being stuff-ups, because there's lots of trade-offs here. I mean, if I think of one example, you're going to have your own sands mining or you're going to have your off-sea wind energy. Possibly you can't have both. In Central Otago right now, you will have people deeply upset by the potential impacts on tourism and wineries if there's further expansions to gold mining, etc. Do you not at least want to hear from the people you need to hear from to get your decision right?
I think that's right, and I think let's remind ourselves of the genesis of this whole thing. It really comes from the failure of the RMA to actually move things along at a better pace. So the sooner that legislation can come through, the better. Although I think Māoridom are going to have something to say about the fact that they're basically cut out of it. But the fast track in the meantime is dealing with as a sticking plaster, and the risk is that it creates almost wartime like powers for ministers when we're not at war. And Shane Jones is very bullish about it. Goodbye Freddie the Frog. And meet me at the ballot box is his latest threat to his opponents. I mean, good on him for being a conviction politician, but I think we should be very careful, to your point, around rushing through a whole heap of projects in a bit of being drunk on the speed, and then to find out later that, oh dear, we've actually made a terrible mistake. So I think the sooner that new RMA legislation can come in and provide a bit more balance to that, then the better this will be.
How are you reading what happened with the gradual revelation that someone, anyway, in government is working on a possible move on being able to move on rough sleepers in Auckland CBD in the first instance? Brigitte, the Prime Minister seemed a bit caught on the hop by a question in the House. Was it just that sort of possum and headlights moment, or what? How are you reading how this has played out?
Yeah, I think it's very clear that there's very early policy work happening in this space, but that shouldn't be unexpected. Anyone who's walked down Queen Street in recent months, or even sort of Courtney Place in Wellington, will know that the effect of having rough sleepers and antisocial behaviour on our streets is having on business and on communities and the ability to feel safe. So I think that that's been a strong feedback from the community and particularly from small business. So, of course, the government should be looking at it. I think the problem is that it looks like that policy discussion is so early on that they haven't got anything that they can say at the moment. And I think really realistically, it is really complex. It's not just about giving police more powers. It's actually about what you wrap around, where you're moving them to, all of those questions that have not got down that policy process pathway yet.
And Andrew, that leaves them exposed in some ways, doesn't it? I mean, we know that even with what happened in the capital, where the police presence in the central city saw people who were on the street there and begging there, move to outer suburbs. What happens next? People are going to go somewhere unless you do have something more comprehensive lined up. And does it leave them a bit exposed for it to be highlighted this early?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, everyone is completely fed up with the issue up here in Auckland. I mean, some of the behavioural issues and the things that you see as you walk around the central city, particularly with your kids, let alone what a cruise ship visitor would see, is completely unacceptable. But this issue is far more complex than just this single policy of just moving people on. I mean, to your point, where are they going to go? Ponsonby Road, Parnell Road, Jervois Road, Newmarket Broadway, Mount Eden Village. They're going to pop up everywhere else. So you do need, there are apparently 800 rough sleepers in the central city. I think you almost need a bipartisan summit to work through that, get the emergency accommodation, get the sort of wet house situation and mental health support behind, get Labour and the opposition parties on board. I mean, from Labour's perspective, there's a lot of small business owners, a lot of blue-collar workers who are actually feel unsafe as well as they go about their business during the day and at night. But the answers are far more complex than just let's move people on. Everyone knows that. And again, it just looks like another optics policy decision as opposed to getting under the skin, under the carpet, and actually ripping it up and start again. I think we can do this. We can do this together, but it will actually take a bit of cash and a lot of effort and about 20 actions, not about one.
Let's just quickly touch on the meth use. They're loving the Sunday afternoon media release. I don't know how much was particularly new in this one. We know meth use has doubled in the past year. I've heard about an education campaign. Look, I know that there are many crying out for any and all addiction services to be available in any number of places, and frankly, we're short of them. What did you make of the substance to this, Brigitte?
Yeah, I think this demonstrates actually when the government does do a comprehensive look at a policy that actually they do look at all the elements. So if you're using this as a test for what you might see around rough sleepers, I think this is a pretty good indication, because this policy announcement had a lot of strings pulled together, quite a lot of substantial investment in addiction services, looking at organised crime, looking at customs, looking at all the elements of how it comes in. So it looks like a really positive, I think, announcement from that point of view in terms of policy-wise. But but obviously the politics are really good too, because we know that the base of organised crime and how they fund it, which is through some of these horrendous drugs, is a key law and order issue, and that rings really well for this government. So the more that they can be talking about it, the more they're going to do so.
Did you see some substance in it in the announcement, Andrew?
Yes, it looked good to me. It's a great announcement for a National Party to give. The minister on the front page of the Herald this morning. If it wasn't for Te Pāti Māori, everyone will probably be talking about it. It's a good use to bring in the spooks and get them looking at the people that are coming in from overseas. We know that New Zealand is part of a multinational business and peddling this stuff and other Class A's. So. It looks good at this end, but of course, as the National Party used to say to Labour, it's you can't solve things with a press release. You've got to solve them with action after the press release. So let's see if that happens.
Just finally, school lunches, back to the future a bit. One of the big providers isn't even on the list, I think, and the price is going up. Is it from $3 to $5? It caused a lot of headaches, did it not, for the government early on? Brigitte, what do we make of what's been announced?
Yeah, I think it's not surprising that they've gone back to the sort of middle ground. I don't think we've returned to the high price that we had earlier, nor that we have the sort of plethora of every sort of single school deciding what they were doing. So I think that this is probably the middle ground that we all needed. There's efficiency to be made, but also using some of that local knowledge, using some of those local businesses. It probably is a little bit more aligned actually with ACT Party values about using the market a bit more efficiently to create some competition. So as I say, I don't think it's surprising at all.
Well, this is a win for Labour, I think, and the left. I mean, there was completely ridiculed those school lunches. It was all over the memes on the internet, and they looked terrible as well. So, again, why do it this way? Why not come at the start? Why defend it for so long and entrench yourself? Why not come out quickly and nip it in the bud? They've got there eventually. Let's hope they improve and are eaten. But why not do it earlier?
Thanks both. Appreciate your time. Andrew Kirton, Brigitte Morten.